I can make this work.
I've probably added on at least 30, 45 minutes.
30 to 45 minutes?
Yeah.
And how fast are you running a half marathon now? That might be asking. Okay, so that would bring you in about 4:15, 4:20?
Yeah, and I'm expecting under 4.5 would be good.
Okay, that's realistic then. Okay. This is a little table just to start off thinking about how you think about target setting. Take a time that you've done already. Obviously, the closer you get to the marathon distance, probably the easier, the more realistic calculation is going to be, a more reliable calculation. If you go online, there are loads of running calculators. There's some on the Serpentine website. If you do you can, in theory, put 100 metres in, and it will give you a rough marathon time after 100 metres. Believe me, that doesn't work, because I've tried that. It doesn't multiply properly. But these are the sort of things you should be looking at. Again, 5k, it's in brackets there because, again, it's just not really worthwhile doing. You need to be doing at least a 10k, or preferably a half marathon, and some people, like my friend Greggy, will probably say a 20-mile race wouldn't go this either, because you're getting up towards much more near to race distance.
I think if it's the pace you do at 20 mile, that is the pace you can race 26 at.
There you go.
First person, that's pretty accurate.
First person. So, as I said, these are on the slide, so you can see these later, but that's the sort of thing you're looking for. So if you do a half, times it by 2, add 10 minutes, and if you want to give yourself a bit of a stretch on that as well, then give yourself 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and that will hopefully help.
Sorry, is it possible to just increase the size of that a little for that on that screen? We're struggling to see it at the back.
There's still plenty of places,
Come forward. We
You
can't
know?
really
there's a
adjust
lot of
the
space.
screen. If you want to come forward, there's loads of space.
Especially because we've got the power complications.
Yeah.
This can go off at any time. The reason part why the screen's like that is because if I do that, it gives you some example calculations as well. So sorry, that's why the screen's half the size it is there. So again, I once did run a 40-minute 10k 2 weeks before a marathon, and from that I did in fact calculate that I should be running between 3:10 and 3:15, and that's what my target time was. It was exactly that, and unfortunately it didn't happen on the day. We'll get back to that later on. But it was the prediction of that and the prediction of the half marathon 2 weeks before that all said that 3:10 was the time I should be looking for. So that's a good starter for those who are thinking about doing a marathon in the future. And what else do you need to consider in setting a target? Because obviously race times are one thing, but they're not everything. If you've been running, you've run before, the better you're going to be at running a marathon. So you'll be stronger, you'll be more aware of your pacing, those sort of issues as well. So they're quite important. So the longer you've been running, probably the better you're going to run a marathon. How you've trained. As Andy said, motivation can be a big thing. How much time do you have? How intense can you be without getting injured? Greg can be quite intense without getting injured. I can't, that's why I don't run high mileage, because I've tried that before, it doesn't work for me particularly. Have you run a marathon before? Have any of you run a marathon before?
That was the question you were going to ask, wasn't it?
A few of you have. Okay. At least when you've run a marathon before, you know what it's like. You know how far it is. It's 26 miles, but it's a long way to get your head around if you've not run it before, so at least you've done that.
So how did you get on? I kind of crashed and burned by about 22, 23 miles.
Cool. So maybe there's something to learn towards the end.
Hopefully, yeah. I really went for just a get round.
Anyone else? How'd you get on?
So long ago, I can hardly remember it. It's 15 years ago, and I wasn't at all methodical about my preparation, but I can get away with it then.
Okay.
I can't now.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
I ran a nice steady pace, pushed a little bit too hard in the middle part, and then struggled over the last 6 miles.
Okay, so we'll cover this. The middle of a marathon isn't halfway. The halfway point is 20 miles. Okay, Urban's struggling.
Yeah, well.
Don't think I'm feeling good at 13.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Okay, if you feel good at 20, maybe you can go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Sorry.
So yeah, previous marathons, learn from experience, which we've all done at some point. Well, we haven't actually. Learn from our mistakes. That's the story tonight. Your own ability as well. Some people can do some things with the same figures that other people won't be able to do. It all depends. And again, scaling up. Some people will cope with a marathon better than other people. If you run 10k the same, it doesn't mean you're going to run a marathon the same. Just be aware of that. Injuries and illness as well. Do bear those in mind. I didn't do that last year. Straight after the seminar last year, I got ill, didn't run for a month, and ran the marathon anyway. was 1 minute mile, was 9 minute miling, and couldn't up the pace. That's because I hadn't trained for a month, basically, pretty course of time. Take into account the course as well. We disagree about whether Chicago is windy, but, don't we? But
I did 3 times and it wasn't windy.
yeah, London is windy. Coming down the stretch in London, it is windy, and I would strongly advise anyone to make sure you run down the Thames into the wind, just so you know what it's like. New York is hilly. Berlin is fast and flat, but pretty dull and can be quite hot. So everything's, you know, and again, London can be warm as well. For those of you who've not experienced London before, it can be very warm. So always take that into account. And be prepared to change your targets as well, because if it does get hot on the day, that can have a seriously debilitating effect. I'm trying to remember, was it a couple of years ago?
2007.
2007 was really hot.
London 2007, 9 in the morning, you could feel it on your neck. It was that hot. And those people who didn't adjust suffered. And those people who just said, well, I'll go for 5 minutes longer, they did really well.
And finally, when you're in a big city marathon, if you think you're going to be running 8-minute miles, or 7-minute miles, or 9-minute miles right from the start, you will not be. In my time in London, I've gone further back off the start, and the further back you are, the longer it takes you to get up to your goal pace. You have to factor that in at the start, because if you don't, you'll start running too fast too soon to try and catch the pace up. Okay, a minute's quite a long time to catch up, so you need to build it into your target time and how you approach the race. Okay, most of you will cover this next slide very quickly. It's everywhere now. Any goal setting for life, it needs to be smarter. You need to be thinking about what you're doing. So you need to have something specific in mind. Ideally, that should be a time or a very slight adjustment of time, so say 3:10 to 3:15, that sort of thing. Or just finishing can be a goal for a lot of people as well. It's a specific time it's getting round. Measurable, obviously, if it's a time that will be measurable, whether you get there or not. I think it probably helps to tell people your target as well. If you just internalise it, you can make a deal with yourself very early on that you don't have to achieve it. If you tell other people, it gives you much more incentive to achieve things. It should be realistic, obviously, because otherwise, again, as soon as you realise that you're not going to get there, you won't feel very good about yourself for overstepping the mark. And there's no point in failing. Failing is no good for anybody, so try and make it realistic. You should be excited by it as well. There's no reason, if you think you can run a 4-hour marathon, there's no point thinking, right, I'll make my target 4.5 hours and I'll be happy with that, because the chance are, if you run 4:25, you'll think you could run quicker, so you won't be particularly delighted when you finish. And make sure you have a look at it at the end. And as I said, when we talked about weather just a minute ago, having 1 or 2 different goals can be a help as well. So if everything goes well, that's what I want to achieve, but I'll be happy with this goal, and if something goes wrong, I'll be happy with the 3rd goal. That does work. I mentioned my first marathon. I was set up to go for 3:10. That's what I was aiming for. Within the first mile, very obvious that wasn't going to happen. I wasn't well, as it turned out, and I didn't feel great. So I immediately reviewed that to 3:30, my first marathon. That would do me. I didn't make that either. Ran 3:31. I was devastated at the finish, really devastated. So I should really have had a 3rd goal. What would I have been happy with? It probably would have been about 3:40, my first marathon, but that's what went a bit wrong. And also think about what you're going to do afterwards. We find a lot of people come to Serpentine, are here for a year, and then they leave again. Quite a lot of those have done a marathon in that time, and then they don't know what to do afterwards. They don't know how to engage with running afterwards. It hurts. Running a marathon on the road when the training hurts, and it takes a lot out of you. If you're going to carry on running, which I hope most people will afterwards, you need to sort of think about how you're going to manage your recovery afterwards, and set yourself a goal for, even if it's 3-6 months' time, and try not to make it another marathon if you can possibly help it. Think about doing 10K sometime later in the summer, something like that, or think about the cross-country season to come, because cross-country is fun. Honest. Back to you, isn't it?
Okay, the key sessions. Just taking a step back, before you sort of go into the minutiae of the sessions, you should all have created a schedule. Who's got a schedule? Hands high. Good, good. Who's got a diary? In other words, what you actually did do. Good, great. So your schedule, not only should it just have all the weeks, etc., but you should be thinking about the whole cycle, across the whole year. Pinpoint when is your target, when's your competition. This is for obviously for an autumn marathon. you might have the whole year with 2 targets, autumn and the spring marathon. And you want to think about what sort of what periods you want to plan for. So if you've got a competition in September, you work backwards. You need some taper. You need some specific preparation, some speed training. Maybe do a half marathon, test yourself, see how you're getting on, and then some general preparation, volume, and VO2 work. So we're going to look at the minutiae of the sessions, but you want to look at that as in the round, and take a step back, really plan your whole year, really. Okay, what's the long run for? Anyone? Okay. Yep. And how often should you do it? Once a week? Any others? Yeah, I mean, if you can do it once a week, great. You might find that a very long run a week, it just takes too much out of you. You might want to do one every 2 weeks. What sort of pace should you do it at? Anyone?
75%, 80%.
Is that heart rate or?
Yeah, you don't want to be racing it. It's just a long steady run just to get the mileage in.
So say your marathon pace was 8-minute mile. What sort of pace would you do the long run in?
About 9:15.
Yeah, cool. So sort of between 30 seconds and a minute and a half slower per mile than your target pace, in that sort of range. You want to say something, Evan?
Yeah, I was just asking, you say a long run. How long is a long run?
Yeah, good point. When I say long run, what run am I talking about? How long?
I would say it's only down 10 miles or more. Really.
Okay, I would say your long run is anything from 15 up, really. I mean, you want to be getting up to 20, 21, 22. You want to be building that up slowly from wherever you are when you start, so 10, 11, 12. But it's not really a long run until you hit sort of 13, 14, 15, and you want to be, doing a good. How many of these long runs do you want to be doing? You say once a week, but you're not going to be doing sort of a 20 mile once a week. How many 20 milers do you want to be doing before a marathon? I'd say somewhere between something more than 3, 5 preferably. So your top 5 runs should be about 100 miles, rule of thumb. Yeah? You're looking worried. Is that because you haven't got it scheduled, or it seems a lot? Yeah?
Everything I've heard before, recently, signed up for marathon, is that you don't really run that distance.
What have you read go up to?
Go about no more than 18, 19, 20 really.
Okay. I mean, look, if you're a fun runner and you're going to wear that fairy uniform or that nurse's outfit or the rhinoceros, and you're racing for charity, then fine. You'll run it. You'll train 18 miles. You'll go slow. I'm talking to you as club runners.
Define slow.
Sorry.
Define slow.
10-minute miling. Sort of jogging. Yeah. Now, I don't want to offend anyone who runs at that speed if that is what you run at. No, seriously, this is all very personal, yeah? So for you, for whatever you are, you're club runners, and you want to get a time that is good for you, okay? So I'm not talking about running slow, I'm talking about you want to, as John said, you want to be happy that you've achieved something. But anyone can run a marathon, anyone can walk a marathon and raise some money for charity, which is fine, which is great. This isn't about charity running, okay? This is about competitive running for you. You're competitive whatever level you're at, okay? And if you want to do that, and you don't want to blow up, you want to be running more than 18 miles, and you want to be doing more than one of them, yeah?